could you tell us a little bit about some of those challenges, and if you feel that, again, some of those were because of your gender?
Is the guilt, right?
Yeah.
Somehow men don't carry the guilt. It's just expected of them to spend time away, work very hard, travel. But when a woman does it, you carry that guilt inside you all the time. I'm not being a good enough mother. Am I spending enough time? And I did the same. So that was one of my biggest struggles. And then what that leads you to do is try to be superwoman.
What works for you, Monday motivation or Friday excitement?
Friday excitement.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hi, Anjali, and welcome to the About Her show. I mean, we've been trying to do this for a long time, but somehow it just didn't happen. So, this is a show where we get trailblazing women to share the story of their lives with us, to tell us about their challenges, ups and downs, successes, failures, all of it. And while they get to talk about themselves, they give us, the opportunity to inspire the listeners, women who are listening in, who have dreams and ambitions, but are not able to pursue them for, one reason or the other. And as you know, we now also have men on the show, men who champion such women, because we believe that for a truly gender inclusive world, men and women need to be allies in this journey. So a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thanks, Sangeeta. And before we start, I just want to say I'm so inspired by your journey because I know there was the About Her as a column, and long back, almost 7, 8 years ago, you'd done a small write-up about me, but to see where you've taken it is very, very inspiring and very impressive. So pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's get started. So just an icebreaker. If you could tell us a little bit about your early life, early days, and how you think your experiences from those days helped you become the person that you are today.
So my father was in the Foreign Service, and what that means is we traveled a lot. And therefore, I've been to almost 6, 7 different schools as I've grown up. I've done O levels in a British school, and then he got, transferred again. So then I went to an American school, and I finally graduated with the IB program, which in those days was kind of unheard of in India. Now everybody knows what IB is. Was very keen to come back to India and study because I used to find India vibrant and colorful and, full of life, which I didn't experience so much in the Western world. However, I do want to say that, and I say this a lot, that today it's a very, very good time to be an Indian and to be a nerd, because I was both. So I was an Indian and I was a bit of a nerd because I did advanced physics, advanced chem, math, and all of that. And it wasn't the greatest time, 30, 35 years ago to be that. So today I think the whole world has changed so much that both of those are admired qualities. I did my, college and post-graduation in India. I came back for that. And then I did want to get into corporate life, but I feel as if all of, corporate life, some are focused choices and some are choices that sort of you haven't planned for, and yet they happen. In those days, it was less about headhunting and more about just applying for roles. And I applied for American Express and got in, and then spent almost 25, 27 years in banking, which I grew to love. And it's defined a lot of who I've been in my career. I met my husband around, I think the first day of my first job was when I met my husband. So I remember that date, and he thinks I remember it because, lightning struck. And I tell him, no, I only remember it because that was my first day of my first job. But those were the early years, and I think the schooling, the global exposure did influence me in my journey as a personal, wife and mother, as well as in my corporate career.
Okay, all right. Yes, of course, we are ultimately, the product of all the experiences that we go through, right? From the time we are born. I mean, some of those experiences we can remember, some of those are those from which, we've imbibed something. So collectively, we become the person because of those experiences. So tell me, along with these experiences, I mean, I'm sure these experiences had their challenges as well. I mean, life is full of challenges, and whether it's career or it's home or wherever we face them constantly. So could you tell us a little bit about some of those challenges, and if you feel that, again, some of those were because of your gender?
So I think one of the biggest things that women struggle with is, and I've said this many times, is the believe in yourself, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't really believe in ourselves as much and as confidently as uh, our gender counterpart, the men do. And that's why something like an imposter syndrome is often associated or more associated with women than men. And
Mm-hmm.
what is that? That's really this feeling of, okay, I've become so successful, I'm here, but did I really deserve to be here? That, this is actually just a myth and it'll be blown up someday because I'm not capable enough to be here. And that's, I think, what women have to overcome. That's the biggest challenge, how you think. I
Yeah.
do think the next generation is changing. The Gen Z is, way ahead of where we were, but I still see that subtle difference between men and women. So that's your biggest challenge as a woman. That's a
Okay.
very gender specific challenge, I think, that you must overcome. And you have to start thinking, I can instead of can I. The
Yeah.
other thing that, again, I think is very gender specific for women, especially as they get married and have children, is the guilt, right?
Yeah.
Somehow men don't carry the guilt. It's just expected of them to spend time away, work very hard, travel. But when a woman does it, you
Mm.
carry that guilt inside you all the time. I'm not being a good enough mother. Am I spending enough time? And I did the same. So that was one of my biggest struggles. And then what that leads you to do is try to be superwoman,
Yeah.
because I would do this, and I actually have done it for some years of my life. Go
Mm.
to office, get up at lunchtime, and at that stage of my career, when my son Karan was around 6, 7 years old, I didn't have a driver.
Mm.
I
Mm.
would drive to his school to pick him up at 1 o'clock, drop him home, try to spend 15, 20 minutes with him, say I have to bond with my son,
Mm.
go back to office, spend time in office, and then come home. I
Yeah.
mean, it was a lot to take
Of
in, right?
course.
It was a lot of, driving. It was a lot of stress to keep that hour free. But it
Mm.
was all because somewhere the guilt was playing inside, right? That am I getting enough time with my son? Am I giving enough?
Yeah.
I do think that you need to make peace with that much sooner in your life.
Mm.
And otherwise, personal challenges, everybody has them. You have your ups and downs in your career.
Mm.
I think I had similar challenges. There was a particularly big one around my health around 11, 12 years ago. But if anything, I think it taught me to value life and to embrace life and say, if I really want to do it, then why wait for tomorrow? Let's do it today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. Every challenge, I think, teaches us something. So rather than viewing challenges, as hurdles, if we look at them as opportunities to grow, I think that would just change the mindset and the way we look at them. And, they would definitely then become opportunities for growth and evolution. So, Anjali,
Absolutely.
yeah. So if you were to look back on your life, do you think there was any particular person, or maybe a number of such people, who inspired you, who were there for you when you needed them in terms of, inspiration, guidance, leadership, whatever?
Yeah, so I don't think it's one. And I guess for most of us, it's not just one person, there are many, right?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
first biggest role model would be my mom, actually.
Okay.
And my mother is an amazing woman, Sangeeta. You met her
Yes.
actually.
Yes. Yes.
She's a PhD in Canadian literature. She was studying and teaching for most of her life. She was married to my father, and he got posted to Ottawa, Canada.
Hmm.
So she was teaching at Ottawa University, and she also decided to do her PhD. And
Wow.
again, I think she was being superwoman because she was juggling being a diplomat's wife, she was teaching, she was studying. And
Hmm.
so she's just been amazingly inspirational for me.
Yeah.
She's actually IAS batch 1963, but she
Okay.
didn't take it because she got married to my father instead in 1964. And they figured that it was going to be difficult for him to be in foreign service and for her to be in the IAS. And
Yeah.
typical, unfortunately, typical woman thing to do, your husband's career takes precedence over yours. And I
Absolutely.
think those are some of the things that one can actually learn from because they both got into, the premier services of the country. But
Yeah.
my mother decided to become a teacher, a professor, and my father went on to his career, so to speak.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
she has been and continues to be one of my biggest, inspiring people because even today, my mother can do a Sudoku better than most other people. She
Okay.
can go through a book faster than most of us. So
Okay.
every time I visit her in Mumbai, all I carry for her is books. And
Wow.
if I carry 4 or 5 books, after 2 weeks, she'll tell me, Beta, I've read all of them. So what's next? And she's 85 years old now.
Wow.
So I think
Commendable.
that's been sort of my biggest, inspiration in life. If I can be half the person she is, I think I've achieved something.
Wow.
But other than that, and my dad, I want to call out, role models don't just have to be women, because I always say the he for she sponsor is very important in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need the women, but we need the men to be part of our journey as well. And that starts at home.
Yeah.
So the journey started for me with a father who was always about treating me and my brother equally, about inspiring me, to go ahead with my career, constantly tutoring me. Women have to be financially independent. Women have to, find their own path. And that's why his wife was doing the same.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and therefore I think he's a role model as a man for me,
Hmm.
because in his generation also he was sort of ahead of it, and he was creating a path for his wife and then for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then along the way in my career, I've had a lot of women that I've seen uh, personally, and they could be clients, they could be women in the same firm that I was working in. I don't want to necessarily name them,
Yeah.
but they were women who were dynamic, who were uh, intelligent and managing their work, their families, their ambitions. And
Yeah.
so very often my question to them would be, what's a day in your life like?
Hmm.
And especially a woman that I really admired a lot. She's ex-CEO of Westpac, which is a bank in Australia. She told me she gets up at 4 every morning to go for a
Okay.
swim, and
Okay.
then she's in office by 7:38 to read her newspaper, goes
Okay.
through a huge day,
Hmm.
goes home, spends some valuable time with family, and then the laptop opens again.
Okay.
And these are women who are like, matter of fact about the fact that this is life. They're making the most of it. So I've known a few of these women, and they've been very inspiring. And I've always felt you can try and balance a lot in your life, but you should stay focused on what you want to do. So I have been lucky that I've seen a lot of very inspiring women as
Hmm.
clients, as people in the firms that I've worked with, and
Hmm.
of course my own mother, who tops that list.
Yeah. Yeah. I can so imagine. Yes.
And lastly, I just want to say, and then there are women that you've never met, but
Hmm.
you read about them, like Indra Nui. She's
Yeah.
somebody I love reading about. I love her podcast because she says such real things, right? Her
Hmm.
advice is so real.
Yeah.
It's not like something you can't do. It's very grounded, it's very real. And look at her amazing journey. I read her, biographical book, which was amazing. But
Hmm.
she's again a role model that I've never met, I've never known, looked at her from afar and said, wow, that's an amazing woman.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're so right. I think inspiration is around us. Sometimes we know those people, so we get directly impacted or inspired. But many times there are people around us, we just have to be open to what they are doing, receptive to it. And then I think, on the basis of that, we can imbibe a lot of it in our lives as well and become role models like you are one of them. Okay. So tell
And
me,
they're like around us, like Sangeeta. So if you look around, like I told you at the beginning, you're inspiring. I mean, look at what you've done with About Her. And I've said this to you always. There
yeah,
are very few women who genuinely are out there to pull women up and promote women. You're one of them. And so for me, I always feel, and I said it before you asked this question, that you're very inspiring to see your journey, where you're taking it. You're becoming a doctor, you're writing a book. So that's like even just some of your friends, you look at their journeys and say, wow, that's so inspiring. Look at what they're making of their lives.
true, true, true. I
It's
agree.
amazing.
So tell me, you've been part of the corporate world for such a long time now, yeah, more than 25 years. So, someone who's aspiring to be a part of this world, what are three tips that that are top of your mind, which you would like to share with them for them to succeed in this world, make a name for themselves?
So I think the first one I already said, and I'll repeat it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Believe in yourself. So go in believing that you can, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the first step.
Hmm.
Don't be second guessing. Don't have doubt. And then try to focus on your choices. It gets easier as you go through your life to understand yourself, right? And know what makes you tick or what doesn't. But even at the earlier stages of your life, if you can try figuring out, this is what really excites me. This is what plays to my strengths.
Yeah.
This is where I wake up every morning energized and I want to go to work, then that's your place. If you're waking up every morning and saying, oh my God, another day of work, oh, if your work is sapping you, then you've got to know this isn't the right thing for me. Because at the end of the day, and that's why I say find your ikigai, right? I'm a big believer in that. Find what is it that you're very passionate about, that you're very good at, and that the world needs, and they're going to pay you for it. So where those four intersect is your ikigai. And the sooner you figure out what's my ikigai, the more successful you're going to be, and the sooner you'll start enjoying, your corporate career.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I don't think all of us get it right the first time,
Yeah.
but just to keep sensing your own feelings, right? Where am I going? How's it going for me? Right? Is this right or not? Just keep learning from that. I didn't enjoy this. Maybe this isn't my thing. And the last thing is build small milestones. Think of the next year. Think of the next thing to do, right? Think of this is my next year's milestone. I want to be able to be the top 10% salesperson. I want to achieve, in my goals, this is where I want to go. Rather than build an overwhelming goal of in the next 5 years, I will be the head of North India for XYZ Bank, because
Yeah.
that's an overwhelming goal. So
Correct.
that's your overall goal. But to get there, build your little steps. I'm
Yeah.
going to go here. In the next year, I'm going to achieve, 20% more than my peers. And to do that, here's what I have to do. I want to get a rating that exceeds expectations. I want to get a bonus that's here. I'm going to do these things. So that's your near-term goal, and that's what you focus on. Yeah, because that makes life a little bit easier, simpler.
Absolutely. So you put it so well, rather than having those unachievable goals, so to say, which overwhelm you right from the start, have smaller goals, small steps, small steps, and then you get to the place there where you want to be. Okay. So, Anjali, most of us, but women more than men, have to struggle with the personal and professional sides of their lives. It's not that men don't have to, they have to, but somewhere society puts more pressure on women when it comes to family, caregiving, children, and all of that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
any woman who wants to be a successful career woman as well has to constantly battle to balance these two sides. How do you do that?
So I think, first of all, it's interesting you say this because you're right.
Hmm.
Somehow, the work-life balance question is only asked to women in panels. It's
Yeah.
never asked to a man.
Yeah.
Men are just expected not to balance work and life. That work is your life, and that's perfectly fine. So I
Yeah.
think, first of all, you need to change that mindset that work-life balance is not just a gender thing for women, it's for everybody. But
Hmm.
women do experience it more. Women are, especially in India, still the primary caregiver. And
Hmm.
so as they go through their marriage, their, children, they go through that whole work-life balance conflict. They go through the guilt.
Hmm.
And some of the advice that I have is, accept that you're never going to have as much time at home as with your children as a homemaker does.
Yeah.
Accept maybe you're going to be able to cook on the weekends and not every day because you may not have the time.
Hmm.
Accept that you can't maybe take your children for, the birthday party. Try if you can, but you may not be able to. So, sir, first of all, make peace with some of that.
Yeah.
And then choose your moments of truth and say, this is what's non-negotiable for me. If
Hmm.
my son has a tennis match where he's, in the quarterfinal, final, or it's important for him to show up, I'm going to show up.
Yeah.
These are the dates of the year that are, sacrosanct for me. I do it till today, huh, Sangeeta?
Mm-hmm.
Beginning of the year, the birthdays are marked off, the anniversaries marked off, and I tell my assistant and I tell, everyone, just mark leave on all of these days.
Yeah.
Because then you're not doing it later, you're not getting defensive about it. You've just said, on these days, I want to be available to my family. It's important for me. It's
Hmm.
important for them.
Hmm.
Medical, sickness in the family. I
Yeah.
think most women need to put that above everything else. And so just choose and make peace with it in your head. Here is my list where my family comes first. And
Yeah.
I will predefine it. I will, announce it and I will plan for it. And here is what maybe I'll never be able to do as much as other women are able to do.
Yeah.
And, like I'm saying, make peace with that instead of constantly staying in conflict and trying to run around and, letting the guilt overwhelm you, because that doesn't help. And
Yeah.
then that guilt, seeps into your relationship also with your children.
Yeah.
So some of that needs to happen. Then you need to partner, right? You need to partner with your spouse. You need to say, we're both working, so which part do I pick up, which part do you pick up? Not an easy conversation, especially in India, in our culture, but
Yeah.
you need to have it. And even if it reaches a, 60-40, 70-30, that's better than 100-0, where you
Absolutely.
do everything and your spouse doesn't. So you need to have a partner who respects that you have a career and that he needs to be able to step up and do a lot more than maybe a husband who has a full-time homemaker,
Right.
right? And lastly, I think have honest conversations in office. You're pregnant. Do you want to? And these are like in the book Lean In, there's so many examples of that. So tell your bosses what are your personal, needs. What are some of the challenges that you're facing? Chances are you're not going to get fired. You're going to
Yeah.
get accommodated.
Yeah.
And people are going to say, okay, Anjali, we understand this. Can we do it this way?
Right.
Because that's how the world is. It does have respect for, women leaders, women in corporate life, but women are so diffident that they get very worried, they get scared, they don't tell their bosses that, they're going through a tougher time. Can they do half days at work? Can they juggle it, etc.? They won't say that. Instead, they'll take on all the burden and it'll burn them out.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how you get a positive response 70-80% of the time when you go have an honest conversation about what you need. So women need to be able to do that much more, lean in. That's what the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
book's
Yeah.
about, right?
Right. Right.
Lean in and ask the question, put
Yes.
up your hand. And
Absolutely.
do silly things like live close to office. Don't spend 1 hour on the road, right? Live 10 minutes from office.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're not wasting all your time on the road.
Right.
Lastly, I want to say it's a good time to be a woman in corporate life because every company almost has now gone into hybrid working, right? So you can choose to do some kind of flexi working. In our time, we didn't have those choices when we started. It was 5 days a week, 9 to 5 or 9 to 7 or whatever. So I think now flexibility exists and corporates are willing to make it more
Yeah.
flexible for women if they ask.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key word, if they ask. So you've got to
Yeah.
ask, you've got to lean in. So the initiative has to start from you. Don't expect people to automatically know or to read your mind and, understand that you're going through a tough time. Just, be there in the sense that tell them that you need help and, like you said, lean in. All right.
Yeah.
So, having said that, Anjali, of course, we go through our lives and we, face all kinds of situations, happy times, not so happy times. But the setbacks and the disappointment sometimes, they have the effect of derailing us. We just go off track. And after that, it's difficult to come back on track. So, how do you deal with these kind of situations when you face them?
So you're right. And like we talked a little bit about this earlier, right? There are setbacks and they
Yeah.
happen to everyone. There are challenges. And sometimes it is tough to overcome them.
Yeah.
But if you focus on the next thing to do, that this is what I need to do to feel better. And I
Mm.
think you always have to stay in sync with your emotion.
Yeah.
So don't intellectualize, everything. Do a balance of mental and emotional sort of balance. How am I feeling? And therefore, what do I need to do? Don't
Mm.
make it all about what I need to do. I'm feeling so badly, etc. And don't make it all about I'm feeling so depressed. And so you've got to figure out how to do both, right? What are my feelings? How do I channel them and do the next thing?
Mm.
And treat it as a learning. So again, I refer to it, you're not feeling good, you're not doing well at it, right? Or it's something that you're failing at. Maybe it's not what you're meant to do. So
Mm.
also think, take a step back, and it's called the balcony view, right?
Yeah.
Go on your balcony of your life and look at yourself and say, if I'm struggling so much in this space, right? If I'm constantly feeling that this is a setback or it's a challenge, is this what I'm meant to do? Is
Mm.
this really for me? So even ask yourself that question, because
Yeah.
it's okay to change direction. In fact, in today's world with agile and everything in technology, there's
Mm.
something called fail fast. So,
Mm.
you're walking down a path and you
Yeah.
think not working, this project isn't going right, something's wrong. You agree to fail fast. And similarly for yourself, fail fast and say, no, I don't think this is the way I should have done it, or this is what I should be doing. And
Yeah.
it's better to do that than to keep trudging along, not achieving, not succeeding. And
Yeah.
then you're kind of going down a rabbit hole. So
Right.
some of these are just, learnings, not easy to do, but as you grow in life and experience, it does become a little easier.
Yeah.
Lastly, small tip for like practical side, find something that's a stress buster. Is it
Okay.
an exercise? Is it a walk? Is it meditation? Is it reading? Is it a chat with a friend? Is
Mm.
it coffee? Ideally, don't make it alcohol or something more like addictive. But
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is it that you need when you're in your stressful moment? Who can help you? What can help you? Just clear your head and feel better, because then you feel better and your mind will start working better. And that's why I'm saying the emotional and mental connect is
Mm.
so important. So
Mm.
always focus on trying to feel better. What is going to make you feel better? Because you then just think better, and
Yeah.
don't be scared. I mean, if we fail, there's something better in store, maybe. So it's a learning.
So I think it's a very, very positive mindset that you have to keep. Because if you kind of just start thinking, looking at things negatively, or start thinking that it's all over, you're never going to be
Yeah,
able to get out of it. So, like that glass, half empty, half full. So, believe it is half full. If you can't do it, it's okay. Try something else. And, like you said, a stress buster. Sometimes
yeah,
stepping back also helps. So, getting the
yes.
objective view. All right. So, in the same vein, Anjali, uh, you've done so well for yourself in your corporate life, and of course, as a mother, as a wife, reached a certain stage. And I think a stage where you can offer some piece of advice to young girls out there who are on the threshold of their personal and professional lives. And I think today's generation is, I mean, there is so much out there for them, so much information, so many opportunities, so many avenues, that there is that danger of getting confused and all mixed up about what I should be doing. So you can give them that balcony view and tell them, offer some piece of advice to them, that when they are stepping out, what is it that they should keep in mind? And what are certain things that are the non negotiables?
Yeah. So I think in a way I've answered the question already. Try to understand yourself, right? So
Okay.
if you've done, for example, physics honors or a math honor, I'm guessing that that's an area that excites you. And
Hmm.
therefore your career choices would be something in that direction, maybe in, STEM, technology, AI, Gen AI, where the world is going, because they're all looking for those skills.
Yeah.
And hopefully your passion is there, your knowledge is there, and you're going to be able to apply it.
Hmm.
If you've done something like journalism or writing, then hopefully that's what was exciting you, and that's why you studied those courses and you're going along that path.
Hmm.
But sometimes I mean, something like banking, I didn't study. I'm a physics honors, and then I'm a master's in applied psychology. But sometimes you apply for something and that becomes your journey, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not, ideally, that's not the right way to do it.
Okay.
But in case, you do think that, okay, I studied this course. However, now when I go down the path of this, it's not exciting me as much. It's
Yeah.
okay to say, I'm going to change direction. I'm going to do something different. So
Hmm.
try to understand yourself, as you embark on your journey. What
Okay.
is it that excites you? Do you love people? Are you extroverted? Is that where you want to be, in the front end of a company,
Hmm.
meeting people every day? Are you the kind of person who wants to work with numbers, is not excited by people, in fact, gets a little intimidated with too many people, but you're great with a spreadsheet, you're great at, analytics and predicting financials, etc. Are
Yeah.
you the kind of person who wants to, if in an R&D company, go deep into some kind of research? So just knowing yourself a little bit,
Yeah.
saying, this is the day that energizes me
Yeah.
because it makes me feel great. So maybe I should be looking at that kind of a function in
Hmm.
the company that I work for. Because
Hmm.
if you're not in sync with who you are, you're going to get exhausted at the end of every day. If
Hmm.
you hate being with people or you don't enjoy people, let me put it like that, and
Yeah.
you're a salesperson who's expected to meet 10 people a day, you're
Hmm.
going to be drained by the end of the day.
Yeah.
If meeting people is what energizes you, you're going to, get energized and excited at the end of your day.
Hmm.
And so figuring out who you are becomes very important as you embark on your corporate journey. and choose your path carefully. Figure it out a little bit. Don't be in a hurry. Don't take the first thing or the second thing. Today, like you said, there's so many choices, right? That you can actually choose. It's not like 30 years ago, there was engineers, there was doctors, there was banking. There was like few fields that were the fields that people should go into. Now there is no dearth of opportunity. So really figure out what you want to do. You can even be an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is what excites me. This is what I want to build.
yeah.
So figure that out a little bit. And then I think as you get into your life, believe in yourself, and wherever you feel that there is something not working, be willing to call it out. That can be sort of the only advice. Work towards gender neutrality, right? I would love to see a world where on a form you never have to fill up male female, that you stop ticking that box,
Yeah,
because that's really a world which doesn't care what gender you represent. They're just going to assess you on who you are and how you answer.
right, right.
There are studies done when a form was answered exactly the same way by Robert and by Roberta.
Yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, Roberta scored much lower than Robert on exact same answers. And
Hmm.
that's all very, very subtle gender biases.
Yeah.
So I hope the world reaches a stage where there's complete neutrality. I don't even say equality, I say neutrality. It shouldn't matter, which gender you represent.
So continuing with this, what do you think are some of the challenges when it comes to gender that women still have to face, despite all that we see around us?
Yeah. So it's still out there, very much so. Unfortunately, the recent Me Too movement has shown us that it's still very much out there. And in sometimes it's out there in a fairly ugly way.
Yeah.
But it's there in small ways. And these are much quoted examples of how, a woman gives an idea at a table and nobody really listens. 5, 7 minutes later, some man says the same thing in different words. It's called he's speaking, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
over speaking her. And then everyone goes, what a great idea. There's a table full of men sitting. A woman will come in. She'll probably take a seat behind. A man will come in. He'll pull up a chair to the table. So I
Yeah,
think they're very subtle, right? When women show qualities of assertion and being go-getters, delivering results, they're called bossy. There was this whole band bossy movement that happened, right? That why should women be called bossy when men are called admirable, when
yeah,
they display the same qualities?
right.
So these are all the subtle ways in which the biases, do exist. I think EQ is emotional quotient is another area where women get attacked, but I would say use it to your advantage.
Yeah,
Very often, again, it's said, oh, women are too emotional. Don't give her that tough job. Or I don't think she can have the tough conversation. But that's all changing. In fact, today, I think IQ is a given at a certain level, but EQ is equally important to be truly successful. So use it to your advantage. That
yeah,
I actually bring in empathy into a conversation. I'm not an emotional, mess that I'm going to break into tears or something, but I
yeah,
just have more ability to understand human beings,
right.
along with all the intellect and all the, grit that I have. Pay equity. And unfortunately, it's still a reality.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the same job, men get paid more. And a lot of companies are now looking at this and correcting. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, they have to almost correct every year or every second year because
yeah,
they keep correcting and saying, oh, okay, these women are getting paid lesser and men are getting paid more. And then it'll happen again in a couple of years because the increments for women may be lower. You're
yeah,
hiring women at lower salaries than men in the same roles. So it's a reality. And I think that's where women must have harder financial conversations and demand, to be paid equivalent to men. So
yeah.
these are some of the areas that I think it still exists. It's still out there. But all we can do is call it out wherever we see it. Don't be shy and say it in a nice way, but just say that, and take your facts with you about why you're not getting the same chance, why you're not getting paid the same amount, why in a table full of men with two women, the woman is looked at to say, is the coffee coming, right?
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
should
yeah.
the woman know if the coffee is coming or not?
Correct, correct. Yeah. So I think little things and they still exist. But like you said, we have to call it out in a pleasant way whenever we can. And of course, companies, organizations are also taking those initiatives to correct it. So I think the future does look bright. We have a long
Yeah.
way, but I think we'll get there sooner,
Hopefully.
not later.
I think the next generation will create gender equality and neutrality for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure too. So, Anjali, we do believe and we do agree that despite everything that we are doing in terms of education, awareness, and giving women their rights and all of that, some biases still continue because I think they've been there for so long that it'll take some time before you can completely, remove them, eradicate them. So tell me, and of course, in that sense, it is important for women to call it out, to also make it known that what is being done is, not being appreciated. And in fact, you don't like it. So in that sense, what role do you think platforms like such as these and many others that exist, what role do you think they can play in helping women get together, raise their voices, and, be heard?
So I think this is very important, right? And there are many, I think, forums which have had women come together,
Yeah,
and they've done a lot of positive good in society because I think they bring women together with common challenges, common themes, common issues.
yeah,
And men have the all boys club, right, which is well known. But
yeah,
women needed to create some of that because women didn't naturally have that. And
yeah,
women just didn't have so many senior women at a certain level in every company.
hmm,
So these forums are what's connecting women across, different companies, different parts of society. And this is where women can share and women can bring a joint voice and also counsel each other.
yeah,
Because as we get experience, someone like me who's now got 30 years of experience, right, with younger women, and I do a lot of mentoring, you
hmm,
can help them with your experience. You
right.
can help them make some choices. You can tell them when they really need to call it out. So I
Hmm,
do think forums like this are doing a lot of good and are much needed.
hmm,
Maybe how can we further structure them
yeah,
into, actually becoming a unified voice?
hmm,
Pick your top three causes and say, this is what we want to stand for, and
hmm,
then take it into almost policy and governance, right?
yeah,
That would be the next step. And
hmm,
there's some forums that are, going that route.
hmm,
Like there is Ficky Women, there is I was the president of the International Chamber of Commerce and Industry Banking Council. So then
hmm,
you start building, structural sort of programs to help women. But I
right.
think it's very, very important and very much needed.
I
So
agree.
thanks, Sangeeta, for what you do. I think this is also showing women what is the opportunity for us to do much more and learn from each other. And you
Yeah.
tell some great stories of different women.
Thank you. I think, yeah, so it is very, very critical. It's high time that women got together. And like you said, the boys network has always existed. Women are kind of new. So it is very important for us to understand why this is important and then be there, like you said, for each other. If you're experienced, be
Exactly.
there to guide, help, mentor the younger ones. All right.
And also, when women get together, often, unfortunately, people say it's like the kitty party, right? It's a little
Yeah,
mocking, especially
yeah,
from
yeah.
men, right?
Hmm.
No, women don't just get together for that. Women can get together for causes to drive, programs. So I think all that also has changed with some of these forums coming in and needs to continuously change more.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, going to a slightly different track, but yet, of course, connected to what we are discussing. Nowadays, a lot of people are talking about mental health issues, mental well-being, mental health, and it is across genders. It's not that we're only talking about one gender. But having said that, considering the number of stages and various kinds of hormonal changes and all that women go through, I think sometimes we need to address women's mental health issues more than that of men. But yet, I don't think that happens. A lot of times, what we are going through is taken as a tantrum, or it's happened to others. What is new about it? But that does not mean that it does not need to be addressed. So, what are your views on this? Do you think women's mental health issues are getting as much attention as they should?
I think, first of all, you said the right thing. Mental health is across, right?
Yeah.
Mental health is a little bit of a taboo in India.
Hmm.
Mental health is not something that we very openly admit. Going to a therapist is not something, a counselor or a psychiatrist is not something that we are comfortable with.
Yeah.
And so, very often, I think that's really the first step across. being able to acknowledge that a mental health issue is just like sort of a cold, and it can become like a viral, which can be debilitating, right? So, how
Right.
do we recognize it and how do we deal with it across men and women?
Hmm.
And COVID actually, I believe, brought a lot of that awareness in. In
Yeah.
COVID times, in fact, I became a mental health certified, professional. So I'm a certified mental health professional as well,
Okay.
because corporates need it. I think societies need it.
Hmm.
And then to your point, are women different? Probably women go through some changes at certain stages of their life. So their mental health issues can be different at those stages.
Hmm.
And I don't think they're being acknowledged or addressed, because postpartum depression is real. It
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, it
You
does.
know, it's a temporary mental health issue, but it's real.
Hmm.
Do we acknowledge it, or do we just brush it aside and say, oh my God, she's like just throwing a tantrum, or she's not able to do this? But
Hmm.
it does plunge you. I don't think I had postpartum depression, but I did have this feeling of, ouch, what happened to my life, right? I had a life and now here I am. All I do is nurse this baby. You know, the baby cries, eats, sleeps, and poops.
Yeah.
And so you wonder, how long is this gonna, last? And you feel, if not depressed, you feel like a little surprised with how your life has changed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I think as women have children, they could go through different experiences. And the last part is a little later in life, menopause, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, actually, companies are bringing in some of that stuff, some of that counseling.
Hmm.
Having said all that, I don't want to focus on mental health for women,
Hmm.
because it becomes one more thing that sometimes can be a differentiator, which can be called out to say, no, no, let's not hire her, and I'm just being really, really awful. But it can happen, and I'm in that age and stage, right? Or she's probably menopausal, we don't need her, she's going to
Hmm.
go through all that. So
Hmm.
sometimes you don't want to highlight the more emotional, changes a woman is going through, because it is corporate life and you want
Yeah.
to balance some of that. I
Yeah.
do think men and women go through mental health challenges, and very few people are willing to talk about it. So it's
That's
sad, but it's there.
But you're right. This will add one more thing, which is sad, but then that's true,
Yes,
So again, one
yes.
of those things which we are, brushing under the carpet.
There are some companies embracing it,
Hmm.
actually having these talks and conversations. I think very, very mature companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I worry as a woman that, is it one more angle than to, look at a woman differently?
True. 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 You have
So
a
I
point.
don't know.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Now moving away from all this and going to a completely, onto a different tangent, what I call midlife rebooting. We see a lot of
Yeah.
people around us who start doing different things once they hit midlife, taking on their hobbies seriously. Not just, I mean, reading is just not a passion, but I also now want to start writing. Painting is not just collecting art. Now I actually want to dabble myself and become good at it, and maybe sometimes just leave whatever I was doing. So, why do you think this is happening? Why so many people are, getting onto all this? And what are your views on it?
I do think that, first of all, it's important to keep, learning, to stay curious.
Yeah.
And so it's a good thing if in the middle of your life or even in senior years, you want to keep doing different things.
Hmm.
But I do think it goes back to the root of some of what I said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That very often we start understanding who we are, what's our ikigai, what's the real thing that excites me
Hmm.
as we go through our life.
Yeah.
Sometimes in your 20s, you don't know it. You're
Yeah.
trying to find it, but it's not that easy, right? To discover, this is it, this is who I am, this speaks to me, this is what energizes me. And
Yeah.
as you get into your 30s and maybe even 40s, you suddenly realize, whenever I pick up the paintbrush, I feel alive like I just don't in any other situation. And
Right.
also, life has given you enough experience by then to know the difference between feeling dead, not quite alive, feeling neutral, it's just another day, and
Yeah.
feeling, wow, I'm so alive that I'm inspired.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people have now started rebooting in
Hmm.
midlife, as we call it, because they've realized what it is that is really giving them the energy and inspiration. And we all want that. We're all looking for that.
Hmm.
By
Hmm.
your midlife, you're also far more certain that that's a very important component of your life. And you're
Hmm.
searching for that. Your purpose, as we all look for, that's what part of your purpose is, because it's giving you the energy and the inspiration and the happiness that you want.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a great thing if you can do it. If you can switch and do it full time, wonderful, right? But
Mm.
sometimes people aren't doing it full time, but they're
Yeah.
finding time to
Yeah.
do what is really the hobby or the event or the activity that gives them all of this. And I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Just filling up those little gaps, which I think just a purely professional existence leaves in your life. So you're just filling those up with this.
Absolutely. Or even for homemakers, right?
Yeah.
Even for people who don't have corporate careers, sometimes they find a hobby that's just changing who they are and energizing them so differently. So, equally important, it doesn't matter what you're doing, but what is it that's really talking to your core and bringing out the best in you?
Right. Like COVID did that. I think it gave us time to
Yeah,
sit back, reflect.
yeah,
Like you said, it gave us the balcony view. And I think a lot of us
yeah,
discovered a lot during those days. All right. So, Anjali, looking ahead,
yeah.
what I may say are your personal and professional aspirations in for the years to come?
So my husband called me a workaholic when he met me, and I've continued to be that all my life. So I can't really imagine not working. I'd love to keep working one way or the other till I'm
Okay.
70 or 75, as long as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I do think I want to write. So I have a blog, I write, but I'd like to write more. And in fact, one of my ambitions is to write a book someday. I have
Wow.
to find the time for it, but I think that's what really speaks to me. So what's my ikigai is to be able to, cater to that side of me. I love to read. I like to, write. It comes naturally to me. And lastly, I keep thinking of how I do this. I created like a few, slides almost of how to find your ikigai. But I
Okay.
feel as if that's the area that really, really talks to me, and I want to help people figure that out.
No.
What's your full potential?
Mm-hmm.
Who can you be? How do you maximize, your life? So I don't know if we call that coaching, but that's another area that I want to do much more in as I go through the next 10, 15 years of my life. I have to figure out how. I don't know how, but it's like I think Maya Angelou said, right, that the legacy you leave behind isn't your homes or your money or the
Yes,
cars. The legacy you leave behind is the lives that you've touched.
absolutely.
So I want to do more and more of that, and I have to figure out how.
You will, I'm sure. You manifest it, it'll happen. And so all the
Great.
best to you. So, Anjali,
Thank
now
you.
we come to the rapid fire round. 5 quick questions, 5 quick answers. Okay. All right. So here we go. The
Okay.
first question. Now, I know that you love to read and you love to love listening to podcasts. So, an easy one. Which is your favorite book or podcast, or both?
Ikigai is my favorite book.
All
And
right.
now there's another one out, and that's influenced me in a lot of ways. So I like to read it again and again. I
Okay.
think it teaches me a different aspect, and I'd love to see how I can make it happen.
All right. Okay. Okay. Next question. How do you unwind after a long day?
I like to walk, so very often you'll see me taking a walk at 6:37.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like music, so very often there are AirPods in my ears, so I'm listening to music.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just a coffee with a friend, so it could be any of these, depending on the day.
All right. Okay. So you're a corporate executive, and I'm sure you've come across situations where you've had to miss a meeting. So, what is the best excuse for missing a meeting?
The honest truth for why you missed the meeting, I think, right? If you missed it because your car, uh, you had a bust, your driver didn't show up, that's the best thing to say. If you
Okay.
missed a meeting because you wanted to hang with your family or something happened, I mean, figure out how to say that without being completely stupid about it, right?
All right.
But make your excuse around the reality. I'll tell you why. Because
Hmm.
lies don't have legs. If
Yes.
you lie, you'll
Hmm.
forget what you said 2 weeks later. But if
Correct.
you built it around the truth, because that's the truth, you'll always remember it.
Right. Right. You have a point there. All right. Next. What works for you? Monday motivation or Friday excitement?
Friday excitement.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And finally, do you have a secret talent that nobody knows about?
I don't think so. I think I write, so maybe people don't know too much about that, and
Yeah.
I'd love to write.
Okay.
And okay, there is a secret talent. I think I have it, but then it's me, and I do think some people have told me I'm fairly good at it. If I hadn't been in corporate life, I would have either been a writer or I would have loved to be a stylist.
Oh,
I can
okay.
never design clothes, but I think I can put it together well.
Yes,
And I
yes,
can
I
look at
agree.
some people and say that, for your body type, you should dress like this. You've got great legs, show your legs. So I think I can put it together for people well, what to accessorize, how to do it. So I don't know if it's a talent, but I often think that would have loved to be a stylist,
I can vouch for
not a
that.
designer, a
Definitely
stylist.
do that. You can definitely do that. The way you're always so very well put together. Yes, you can definitely do that. All right.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Anjali, thank you so much for being on the show. Like I said, we waited a long to make this happen, but I think things happen when they are meant to happen, not a day later, not a day sooner. But a
Yeah.
very, very interesting and delightful and an insightful conversation. So, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Sangeeta. Always a pleasure to interact with you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the About Her Show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the About Her Show.